Hey, Mark Graham, Arizona Response Systems. Today we are going to do the Rhodesian pattern camouflage on an FAL type rifle. First thing we need to look at is my awesome Rhodesian camouflage paint set, which is available off the Arizona Response Systems website. It includes baby poop and blue-green paint, brushes, gloves. It's enough paint to do at least 2 complete rifles and accessories. I'm actually, I think, on my 3rd or 4th rifle with just one of my paint sets. We need to look at what we're not going to paint. Now, the customer wants this gun painted Rhodesian, customer gets it. It is an atypical configuration. Normally you would have a non-bipod cut barrel, and you would have a grenade launcher gas plug that folds back over the handguards, and the carry handle would be removed. Customer did not want the carry handle removed. So I've refinished this in Medical 3 satin black. It's bone dry, no oil on it at all. I've engraved a replica RA number. It's actually outside of the range of the actual South African numbers, so it won't be considered a forgery. I've got an RA number on the bolt and the bolt carrier. This one is on an older LMT manufactured DS Arms receiver. So what we don't want to paint, anything that's a moving part. So we don't want to paint your rear sight because it still has to be able to slide. We don't want to paint the selector, and we don't want to paint the area under. We can paint the top of the selector. We don't want to paint the selector travel, because then it gets gummed up and it won't move smoothly. The receiver lock lever, we don't want to get any paint in the magazine catch or the bolt hold open channels, but it doesn't matter if you get some on the operating surfaces of it. If your charge handle was not installed, you wouldn't want to get it in the charge handle rail. Keep it away from the gas regulator and your gas plug, and if you have the grenade launching gas plug, you don't want to get it on the wings of that. And your front sight. Also, we're going to keep it off of the flash hider, because they used rifle grenades that slid over the flash hider, and so this can't get gummed up. And I'm going to start with the lighter color, because it is easier to paint dark over light than the other way around. And I'm going to paint about 60% of the gun in the light color, because when I paint over it, again, I can paint dark over light easier than light over dark. Now, there are some reports that these paints were applied by, young 18 to 20 something year olds in the motor pool, because this is the same paint that they used on their armored vehicles, but that it was applied with torn rags. And I think that's plausible, because they probably didn't have 100 paintbrushes. I use these chip brushes because they are cheap, they are stiff enough that I can get into edges with them, and they're disposable, but they do leave what is obviously brush marks versus a rag mark. Now, you will reduce the amount that you see of the brush marks when it comes to distressing it, so it won't be as clearly identified as a brush mark. I've used the sponge brushes also, but I've just found that they are a little bit harder in the application, and as the foam gets built up with, I'm going to paint around the RA number there. As the foam gets built up with paint, it wants to fall off of the handle, and so that's why I go with the chip brushes. If you want to make it stiffer, you can cut the front third off of the brush, and that'll leave the bristles a little stiffer. And so you see, I'm not being all artistic. I'm just putting it on. I'm gonna put it on the front sight wing, but keep it off the gas regular. I mean, oh my gosh, if I slip and get a little bit, it's not a big deal. But you don't wanna, you know, deliberately paint that area up. Now I'm seeing from here that there was some oil still on these handguards. See how the paint's separating? That's okay. They didn't get them entirely clean before painting them in the first place, so it'll only make it look more realistic. All right, here I'm painting over the receiver lock, but this area right here where it has to travel, I don't want to get any paint in there. Same with the selector. I can paint all around the selector. I can get it on the side of the trigger guard, whatever, but want that area here to remain clean. And paint's not going to stick very well to the rubber butt pad, so there's really no point in doing that. Plus it gives you a place to hold. Now I have seen all varieties. I've seen you know, polka dot, like leopard spots. There is no right or wrong, whatever appeals to you, because remember, these were young kids stuck in a motor pool saying paint your rifles. Your rifles stand out. Big black rifles stand out against the terrain and allows the enemy to see you from a far distance away. And as to the colors, which I've matched perfectly through extensive trial and error, I've gotten the exact right color, shade, and sheen. I've done ones where I have the original and mine right next to each other. They are completely indistinguishable. And now you too can benefit from my efforts by buying my Rhodesian pattern paint set. All right, that look about 60%. I'll slap a little bit more on there. Not too worried, even though the sling mount is a moving part, it's got such loose tolerances that the paint's not going to affect it. So yeah, I think that's about half. Maybe a little bit more in here. Oops, I got some on the side of the rear sight. No big deal. Just want to keep it away from the sight screw and make sure that it still has its full range of travel. Alright, now I'm going to switch to the green. This is a blue-green, and it was very difficult to get the perfect match because it would either come out too blue or too green, but after many attempts I got it just right. Alright, now the reason I did 60% of the other colors, you can see I'm partially painting over with the darker color, and so when I'm done it'll be about half and half. And I tend to favor bands of color versus the polka dots or whatever, but whatever appeals to you. We're going to be removing about 30% of the paint during the weathering distressing process, so it'll look good. One of the hardest things when doing camouflage paint finishes is knowing when to stop. Keep trying to, well, I can make it a little bit better, or if I do this here, and at some point you just have to say, it's good, stop. And when you're finished, the overall effect will be really good. But if you keep like looking at micro level, you miss the overall. You gotta, what do they say? I can't see the forest because of the trees. If you're in here trying to get it all perfect, you miss the overall effect. So I do have to keep the serial number clear, just like on the originals. I've seen them both like looked like they were masked, and look like, oh, I got paint on it, and now I don't. So, oh, got paint on it again. Now I don't. Just keep the serial number visible, both for authenticity and because sometimes you're going to have to find out what the serial number of your rifle is, and you don't want to have to scrape paint away to do so. All right, get these handguards slopped on, get it to drip. Don't have to get every single little bit of the black covered, but if you get most of it, it'll look good. Because we're going to take some of this paint off in order to reveal the black underneath it again. Now that dripped a little bit more than I like, so I'm going to flip the gun over so that it now drips in the other direction. So even if you aren't using the sling mount, and yes, Carl, this is your rifle. Having the sling mounts on, it makes it easy to paint, even if you take them off later. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my light color, and I'm just going to pull a little bit of the white color into the dark, so it's mixing. But the purpose of this, these guns were painted, and then they were used, and then they were painted again, and then they were used again, and then they were painted again. So you're going to see multiple layers of paint. And what I like about using a brush is when I pull one color into the other, when it comes time to weathering, it'll give the appearance that way that there are multiple layers of paint. So here I'm pulling the yellow into the blue, and now I'm going to quickly go over it with the blue and pull it into the yellow. Not much, just and these little fingery parts that come from using a brush instead of a sponge, I think, make a better overall effect. All right, so we've got wet paint, and we have to do the next step quickly. You have maybe 15-20 minutes, but the sooner you do this next step, the better. And that involves a trash bag. So we're going to stop here for a minute, and I'm going to go grab another trash bag. I now have a kitchen trash bag. I have tried a wide variety of methods for distressing, and I have found that this one works the best. Take a kitchen trash bag, take the damp but not running paint, and rub it like a wet dog with a towel. Squeeze it into all of the places, and then aggressively tear it off. Same thing with the handguards. This takes some of the sheen off and puts many months of wear on it immediately. Now to get a clean surface, I'm going to take the trash bag, turn it inside out, do it again. This also transfers some of the green onto the black, transfers some of the black onto the green, gets little specks of it on the areas that you didn't paint, but in a manner that's not going to affect its operation. Yeah, so zoom in here. This is exactly what I'm looking for. You've got I don't know how to describe it other than if you put this up against an original, it's going to be 100% match. It's also convenient that this technique is so simple. I used to do stuff like put on big heavy welding gloves and fill the gloves with sand and rub it. But this technique seems to work the best. You can go really heavy on the grip because most of the paint ends up coming off of the grips. And that seems to be about right. Now I did get some on the flash hider, which is okay. I'll take that off when we do the distressing. So yeah, we've got some of the black exposed again, which is good, and we will expose more when we do the weathering or distressing. But I'm pretty pleased with it. Okay, and we're going to compare that one to the other one we did today. This one has the non-bipod cut barrel, and it has the carry handle cut off. But also because the Rhodesian pattern has been so popular in the last couple of years, grenade launcher gas plug assemblies are in short supply right now. Anyone who's got one, there's a market for it. Anyway, oh, drat! I have one magazine I need to do. Now, on the magazine, I'm going to do the magazine in the gun. Because I don't want to get it inside the mag well. Yeah, there's some mixed paint on that brush. Okay, there's the mag, and we'll further distress it later. Alright, we're going to let these dry. We're in Arizona, so 24 hours is probably plenty if you're in a more humid environment. I mean, it's 117 degrees today, which is why I'll be very happy to get out of the non-air conditioned paint booth. But if you're in an area that has higher humidity, lower temperatures, you might want to let it dry for 48 hours before we do the next step.